You think you know the ocean, the glittering blue surface, the calm horizon, the comfort of sunlight glinting across waves. But that surface is a lie. Beneath it lies pressure strong enough to crush steel, darkness older than light itself, and silence that's never truly silent, because something is always moving down there. We've mapped other planets more precisely than our own seas. Over 80% of Earth's oceans remain uncharted. That's more unexplored territory than all the jungles, deserts, and mountain ranges combined. So when sailors once said the sea had monsters, maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe they were remembering. Subscribe to Beyond Extinction, where myth meets fossil, and science listens to the stories the Earth still whispers. Because tonight, we're diving beneath the surface to find the creatures that blur the line between myth and memory. Every culture built its monsters from water. For the Norse, it was a serpent that encircled the world. For the Japanese, a silent giant that rose from calm seas. For the Polynesians, guardians of fault lines where the earth itself trembles. These weren't fantasies. They were explanations, survival stories wrapped in myth. And now, with sonar, submersibles, and deep-sea sensors, science is uncovering truths that sound more like legends. Every strange sound recorded, every unexplained shadow beneath a research vessel keeps proving the same thing. We've never truly left the age of monsters. We just renamed them. So what if the old ones were real, or still are? In 1997, the ocean exhaled, a deep rising sound, too rhythmic for machinery, too massive for any known creature. It reverberated across 3,000 miles of water and was caught by multiple hydrophones at once. Scientists called it the Bloop. At first, the theories were simple: a collapsing glacier, an underwater volcano. But there was a problem. The sound didn't match either. Its frequency pattern looked organic, almost like muscle contractions. For a decade, researchers couldn't explain it. Then someone noticed the coordinates. They matched the fictional city of R'lyeh from H.P. Lovecraft's stories, the resting place of Cthulhu. Coincidence? Probably. But tell that to the people who still replay the recording online and swear that they can hear breathing in it. Years later, NOAA claimed the source was an ice quake. But the question remains, if it was just ice breaking, why did it sound alive? What if that sound wasn't something waking up, but something turning over in its sleep? Sailors returning from Antarctic routes in the 2000s told the same story. Quietly, reluctantly, and always the same way. A white figure moving beneath the ice. Smooth, human-shaped, enormous. They called it Ningen, the human. Some described it as 60 feet long, with limbs like arms and a torso that seemed to turn as if aware. Others swore it followed their ships, gliding just under the ice sheets, matching their speed. The air was below freezing, the water black, the light faint. Yet the feeling was always identical. Something was there, watching. No photograph has ever been verified, though a few grainy images circulate online. And in one, the shape looks unmistakably humanoid. Experts call it pareidolia, our brains making faces out of shadows and ice. But even oceanographers admit the Antarctic shelves are a mystery. Beneath 2,000 meters of frozen darkness, new species are still being found every year. Translucent worms, eyeless fish, glowing crustaceans. So if evolution could create those, what else might be moving under the ice, slow and white as a dream? The ocean hides its secrets well, but Antarctica hides them perfectly. Centuries before sonar, maps were marked with warnings. Here be monsters, and none was feared more than the Kraken. Sailors described whirlpools forming from nowhere, islands rising and sinking, and tentacles like cranes snaring ships whole. They weren't writing poetry, they were writing wills. For centuries, skeptics dismissed these tales, until the early 2000s, when cameras captured the truth. A 43-foot giant squid, Architeuthis dux, flashing its massive eyes in the deep off Japan's coast. 10 years later, a full video surfaced, its skin glowing gold, its tentacles unfurling in silence. The Kraken had stepped out of myth and into biology. The same suction scars still appear on sperm whales hunted by these deep-sea giants. They are real, not gods, but reminders that life doesn't need our permission to be terrifying. When sailors saw a squid the size of their ship, they didn't exaggerate. They survived something we had forgotten existed. And maybe that's the real terror. Not that the Kraken was ever fake, but that it was real and still down there. Before scientists named anything, ancient texts named it Leviathan, a sea creature breathing fire and armored in scales. Its name meant the Twisted One, and its legend stretched from the Hebrew Bible to early Christian myth. For centuries, people argued what it could be. A whale, a crocodile, a metaphor. Then in 2010, paleontologists found the skull of a predator that matched the myth in almost every way. A whale with jaws over 3 meters long, teeth the size of daggers, and bite strength that could shatter bone. They called it Leviathan melvillei, in honor of Melville, the author of Moby Dick. It hunted other whales, fast, brutal, intelligent. A real giant that ruled the seas 12 million years ago, sharing its domain with Megalodon. The Bible may not have been describing imagination. It might have been remembering evolution. Somewhere between myth and fossil, Leviathan crossed over from theology to paleontology. And that's what makes it haunting. Because sometimes we don't invent monsters. We simply inherit them. They say silence at sea is never peaceful. It's a warning. When the wind dies and the water turns glass still, Japanese sailors once whispered a single name, Umibōzu, the sea monk. He rose from the fog, enormous and featureless, a dark, bald head emerging from the horizon like a moon made of shadow. If you dared to speak, he'd ask for a bucket. Hand him a normal one, and he'd drown your ship. Offer him a bottomless bucket, and confusion might buy you a few seconds, just enough to live. No one ever described seeing his full body, only that he appeared when the sea went eerily calm, as if the ocean was holding its breath. Historians link the story to rogue waves or pressure changes before storms. But sailors knew better. They believed Umibōzu was the ocean's priest, a spirit rising to claim those who stopped respecting it. Maybe that's why every sailor's superstition begins with the same rule: never trust quiet water. Half a world away, in the still waters of British Columbia, there's a creature whose legend began long before the word monster ever reached the region. The Syilx people called it Naha-itk, the lake spirit who demanded offerings before anyone crossed its waters. Centuries later, settlers renamed it Ogopogo. Eyewitnesses described it as a long, dark serpent with a horse-like head, up to 49 feet long. In 1926, 30 witnesses reported seeing the same shape moving beneath the surface. Since then, countless blurry photos and sonar blips have followed, each one adding fuel to the fire. Scientists have tried to explain it away. Sturgeon, logs, waves, optical illusions. But sonar scans from 2018 revealed moving objects 40 feet deep, shaped unlike any known fish. No proof, only echoes. And sometimes echoes are enough to keep myths alive. Could Ogopogo really exist? Or is it something deeper? A reflection of the fear every human feels when the water looks too still and too dark to be trusted. Imagine swimming in perfect blue water and realizing that the shadow below you is not a reef, it's alive. 60 feet long, 60 tons in weight, teeth the size of your hand. That was Encircles Megalodon, the most powerful predator that ever lived. Its bite was over 40,000 pounds of force, capable of crushing whalebone in seconds. For 20 million years, it ruled the oceans until something, climate, competition, or catastrophe, made it vanish around 3.6 million years ago. But did it really vanish? Every decade brings new reports. A sonar returned too big, a whale carcass bitten clean in half, a shadow that moves deeper than light. Science insists it's impossible. that the food chain couldn't support such a giant, and yet 95% of the deep ocean remains unexplored. Maybe extinction is just a word we use for things we've stopped seeing. If a creature like that once existed, what makes us so sure it doesn't still wait somewhere below the last ray of sunlight? In Norse myth, Loki had a child he feared, a serpent so immense it was cast into the sea, where it grew until it encircled the earth itself, biting its own tail. They called it Jörmungandr, the world serpent. When it rises, the world ends. To ancient Scandinavians, this wasn't just a story, it was a warning. Because the sea was their world's edge, and beyond that edge, something stirred. In the 18th century, sailors along the Norwegian coast reported sea serpents longer than ships, moving in smooth, wave-like motions. Naturalists documented the sightings, but never the evidence. Then came the oarfish, real, silver, and over 50 feet long. It rose from the deep before storms, shimmering like liquid lightning. In Japan, it's still called the messenger from the sea god's palace. Maybe that's what Jörmungandr always was, the ocean's way of sending warnings. Every myth starts with an encounter, every serpent a message. What if Ragnarok isn't fire and doom, but a simple reminder that the sea always takes back what belongs to it? No one ever saw it clearly. No one ever lived long enough to. In the cold waters of northern Norway and Canada, fishermen whispered of something called the sea eater. Not a shark, not a whale, something else. They said it appeared without sound, no waves, no ripples, no warning. Just stillness. And then, nothing. A ship gone. A patch of ocean smooth as glass. Those who swore they'd seen it described a dark, shapeless form sliding beneath their hull. Skin like oil, no eyes, no face. A mouth that stretched too wide to measure. It didn't attack, it simply erased. Marine scientists have their theories. Sudden methane bursts, invisible undercurrents, dead water that traps ships until they capsize. But those explanations came centuries after the stories. And even today, every year, a few boats vanish without trace. Maybe it isn't rage that the ocean hides. Maybe it's hunger, a slow, patient appetite that never left. Long before fairy tales softened their faces, mermaids were nightmares. To ancient sailors, a woman singing from the rocks didn't mean romance. It meant disaster. Greek legends called them sirens, half-bird, half-woman creatures whose voices lured sailors to their doom. When those stories spread across northern seas, the sirens merged with Celtic and Norse sea spirits, becoming half-fish, the form we know now. They were never kind. They sang in human voices but watched with inhuman eyes. The sailors who heard them didn't drown by accident. They followed willingly. Even Christopher Columbus recorded seeing mermaids near Haiti in 1493. Though, in truth, they were probably manatees rising from the water. But that mistake says something deeper about us. We see what we want to see, even in the dark. In every culture, from Japan's Amabi to Scotland's Selkies, the ocean disguises its warnings in beauty. Because the deadliest things it holds aren't the ones that bite, they're the ones that sing. So ask yourself, if the sea called your name softly enough, would you recognize the danger in its voice? In a Colombian coal mine, miners once unearthed a fossil vertebra the size of a dinner plate. When scientists examined it, they realized what they were holding wasn't part of a crocodile. It was from a snake, a 50-foot snake, Titanoboa tsureginensis, the largest serpent ever known. It lived 60 million years ago in tropical swamps that would one day become the Caribbean coast. Its body was thick as an oil drum, weighing over a ton, strong enough to crush giant turtles and prehistoric crocodiles. Fossils show it thrived in a world far hotter than ours, proof that as Earth's temperature rose, life didn't shrink. It grew monstrous. That discovery rewrote what we thought possible. And yet, the idea of such a serpent still feels mythic, a living echo of every dragon, hydra, and serpent story ever told. Maybe the reason every culture dreams of giant snakes is simple. Because once, they were real. And if global temperatures rise again, what's to say they won't return? Some monsters rise from the sea, others rise from imagination. The legend of El Gran Maha began not in old maps or fishermen's tales, but on anonymous forums. Cryptic posts claiming a sonar anomaly had been recorded under Arctic ice. The description spread like contagion: a creature 2,000 feet long, 6 white eyes, and a mouth full of translucent teeth. Supposedly, the data vanished. Only one blurry sonar image remained. A curve, a shadow, a possibility. No scientist confirmed it, but no one could disprove it either. Then came the artwork, the fake documentaries, the whispered debates on whether we'd awakened something sleeping beneath the polar caps. Within a year, El Gran Maha had become the first truly digital sea monster. Born from code, raised by curiosity. It doesn't matter if it's real anymore, because we've always needed something to haunt the places we can't reach. And in a world mapped by satellites, myth finds new depths, not in water, but in Wi-Fi. Maybe we never stopped creating sea monsters. We just started uploading them. In the Maori world, the sea was alive, and so were its spirits. They called them Taniwha, beings of immense power that dwelled in rivers, caves, and the deep ocean. Some were protectors, bound to specific tribes. Others were destroyers, punishing those who disrespected sacred waters. To outsiders, the stories sounded like superstition. But there's a pattern the ancients couldn't have known. Many Taniwha lairs lie directly above underwater fault lines and volcanic vents. Places where tides roar, bubbles rise, and the ground itself shifts without warning. What the Maori described as the Taniwha's rage was likely the rumble of the earth. Earthquakes, geysers, and tremors translated into story. Their myths weren't fantasy, they were early geology, warnings disguised as reverence. Today, Maori divers still leave offerings when entering deep caverns or unstable waters. Not out of fear, but respect. Because the line between spiritual danger and natural danger has always been thin, the Taniwha teaches something the modern world forgets: that what we call myth was often just wisdom spoken in a different language. For centuries, we filled the ocean with our imagination. Now, we're filling it with our inventions. There are more than 1 million miles of undersea cables pulsing with electricity, carrying the world's information. Mining drones crawl along the seafloor, leaving metal scars in their wake. And nuclear submarines patrol the abyss, silent, invisible, alive in every way but breath. Maybe the next sea monster isn't born of evolution, but of industry. A machine so vast, so autonomous that one day it keeps moving long after we forget to tell it to stop. When future explorers find its carcass half buried in silt, will they recognize our fingerprints? Or will they mistake it for something organic, something ancient, reborn in steel? The first Leviathan was a myth. The second was a fossil. The third might already exist. The question isn't whether the monsters are gone, it's whether we've just started building new ones. For thousands of years, humanity has stared into the sea and seen its own reflection. Beautiful, terrifying, unknowable. We gave it names: Kraken, Leviathan, Ogopogo, Taniwha. We turned fear into story, and story into warning. But maybe those monsters weren't legends. Maybe they were memories. Fossils that still breathe, myths that never died, only waited for science to rediscover them. Because the ocean remembers everything that touches it. Every shipwreck, every sound, every secret we've dropped into its dark. And if we've learned anything, it's that the deeper we look, the stranger the truth becomes. So before you leave the surface tonight, remember, the sea doesn't forget, it just waits. Which of these 14 creatures do you believe still lurks beneath the waves? And which one do you want to be real? Tell us in the comments below. And if you believe some monsters never die, subscribe to Beyond Extinction, where every dive is a descent into the unknown.